This is an update edition of Your Daily Detroit, recorded on Monday, March 19th, 2019. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays, sharing what to know and where to go in Metro Detroit on this last official day of winter.
I will applaud that, Jer.
In honor of upcoming spring, let's just get right into it. Here's a piece of late-breaking news as we record this podcast. Beaumont Health has announced that they intend to build a new $140 million hospital at the southeast corner of Lapeer Road and Market Street in Oxford. The hospital, if approved, would have 117 beds. The Michigan Certificate of Need Commission, who regulates the number of hospital beds in the state, recently identified Oxford as a limited access area community, meaning it doesn't have enough beds to serve the population. The proposed 225,000 square foot facility would be 5 stories tall. If approved, construction would start in the next 2 years. This is also notable as there has been an ongoing debate whether or not the region needs more hospital beds, and health systems have been attempting to open more beds in northern Oakland County for a while. McLaren Health recently tried to build a hospital there and was denied, and the Henry Ford Health System intended to file an application for a hospital in the same area, but now their application will be delayed until June as they didn't file with the Need Commission in time. That gives Beaumont a leg up in the process.
We've talked about car insurance rates more than a few times here on Daily Detroit, but usually from a city and statewide perspective, as in Michigan has the highest car insurance rates in the country and nowhere worse than here in Detroit. Now, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the Democrat from Southwest Detroit, is proposing a bill that would tackle the issue from a national perspective. Tlaib's bill would block insurers nationwide from using someone's credit history when setting auto rates. She says that an analysis found that adult single drivers in Michigan with good credit scores and clean driving records were charged more than $400 on average more for auto coverage than those with an excellent score. The Congresswoman later tweeted that auto insurance companies should base their rates on a driver's record and history and not on a formula that hurts low-income communities. Though her bill has 25 co-sponsors, there's been no signal from Democratic Party leadership that they're willing to take this one up.
3 local nonprofits have been awarded $510,000 and technical support to provide help for Detroiters looking for jobs. The program is funded by the City Foundation and the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, or LISC. It's called the Bridges to Career Opportunities Initiative, and it will serve about 600 families in Detroit. The majority of people who enter the Bridges program are either unemployed or working in minimum wage jobs, and test somewhere between a 6th and 8th grade education level. After Bridges, more than 3/4 of participants move on to occupational skills training, and 64% achieve industry-recognized credentials. So think of this as an on-ramp to jobs that people can actually earn enough to live off of. The new funding in Detroit is part of a $10 million 3-year national effort.
File this one under TIL. Detroit has its own winery. It's called Detroit Vineyards, and according to Crane's Detroit Business, it's opening a tasting room in the old Stroh's ice cream building on Gratiot Avenue this spring. Detroit Vineyard already makes wine at the facility, which is attached to Detroit City Distillery. But the new tasting room aims to open May 3rd and be open 7 days a week. Detroit Vineyards isn't new. It was actually founded in 2014 by a University of Michigan business professor and an experienced winemaker who's worked at wineries in California, Australia, and here in Michigan. The company sources its grapes from growers mostly in West Michigan, but also in Detroit, where it planted 2 acres in 2015. Its current lineup includes Riesling, Chardonnay, a Cabernet Franc Rosé, and a Cabernet Sauvignon, plus a dry Motor City mead. You can find their offerings at stores including House of Pure Vin, Plum Market out in Ann Arbor, Supino Pizzeria, and Slow's Barbecue. On their website, I was interested to see, Jer, that they said that, right along the Detroit River hosts an excellent microclimate for growing grapes.
That has roots in history. If you remember...
Yes, they also have a quote from Cadillac.
Right, because if you think about all the streets, especially on the east side, they were built around ribbon farms. This is super nerdy, but the idea of French farming was you have a little plot of land along the riverfront that then brings water miles inland. So if you look at a lot of streets on the east side of Detroit, they actually reflect the old ribbon farms.
Excited to try some Detroit wine. I mean, it's easy to say I don't have high hopes for it, but these guys seem to know what they're doing.
Bad news for baseball fans. The Tigers' ace pitcher, Michael Fulmer, has been recommended for season-ending Tommy John surgery to reconstruct the ligaments in the elbow of his right throwing arm. In a statement, the Tigers said Fulmer began to feel soreness in his right elbow following a bullpen session during Grapefruit League play. The pitcher underwent an MRI and got a second opinion from a doctor and is now seeking a third opinion. Recovery from the surgery, should he get it, typically lasts at least a year. Fulmer was named the 2016 American League Rookie of the Year, but he's suffered a series of injuries the past 2 seasons. Detroit was reportedly hoping he could serve as trade bait to help the team rebuild this season. Do you like what you're hearing? Well, you can be a part of keeping it going. That's right. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/dailydetroit. We have some cool rewards for you, including some swanky stickers.
Everybody loves stickers. You can slap them on your laptop and show your pride in listening to Daily Detroit.
Only $4 a month.
Here's a story definitely relevant to my personal interests. Eater Detroit reports that a new Mexican bar and restaurant called Peso plans to open its doors on Bagley in the space formerly occupied by the Huron Room and the short-lived Fist of Curry. The ownership team is the same one behind Toma Detroit, which is a tequila bar concept that won a Hatch Detroit grant and plans to open that bar on Michigan Avenue in Corktown. We featured the winners of that round, including Toma Detroit, on this podcast last summer. So, expect plenty of margaritas and tequila-based cocktails at Peso, plus a menu full of tacos, tortas, and burritos.
Sven, who doesn't love Legos?
Well, my boys certainly do, and I loved Legos too, but it's not fun when you step on them in a dark house, I'll tell you that.
No, not at all. Well, here's some good news about Legos. The Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, one of Michigan's most iconic places, may soon have a Lego version. Yes, you could build your own version of the 132-year-old hotel in your living room. There's a campaign on Lego's website to have a Grand Hotel kit that will be sold in retail stores. The proposed 710-piece Lego set was designed by Dr. David Lorch. He previously built a 9-foot model of the Grand for the hotel's 130th anniversary. 10,000 people must back the design in order for it to get made. You can vote by going to ideas.lego.com, and of course, we'll have a link in the show notes.
People who live near Detroit's popular commercial areas and entertainment venues have been feeling the parking pinch lately. Specifically, out-of-city visitors coming and parking for free in neighborhoods, and then when residents get home, there's nowhere left for them to park. To help deal with this, a new ordinance has been proposed to create a new, simpler process for residents to create residential parking permit zones on a block-by-block basis. The ordinance proposed by Councilmember Raquel Castañeda Lopez and Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield would require 60% of all residences to sign petitions in support of creating the residential parking permit zone. Once established, 50% of residents must sign up for the permit in order for the zone to become active. The ordinance would allow residents to apply for up to 3 passes and 30 annual visitor passes. In addition, seniors and residents that receive a partial or complete property tax exemption will be eligible for a discount. Parking zones aren't a new thing in the U.S. or Michigan, but they may face some pushback in a place where the car is considered king.
I could see a lot of angry people online about this, people who have been freeloading parking spots near like Little Caesars Arena or something like that.
It points to the need, dare I say it again, for more robust public transportation because it's getting harder and harder. I mean, as Detroit gets more popular and busier and more filled in with buildings, frankly, traffic is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger issue.
Well, this was already an issue a couple of years ago in the Arts Center when I lived there, being near Woodward.
Mm-hmm.
For the DIA, all that stuff, that we had to fight them off all the time.
Oh, yeah. We went to the Cat Video Festival at the Detroit Film Theater a couple weeks ago. How was that? It was awesome. Parking was horrendous. It was so hard to find a spot. And it was the same thing. I thought, man, I wish that there was just an easy way to go over to Woodward, hop down, take a train down here or whatever, and boom, you're here.
One piece of news we kind of coasted by, but is rather interesting, and I wanted to talk about it, is that the City of Detroit's restaurant inspections are now online. You're now able to see for the first time, establishment by establishment, the most recent inspection results and just how bad or good the results are. The city has 3 types of violations, and I'll be honest, it's kind of confusing. Priority violations are the most serious category. Those include violations that directly contribute to foodborne illness or food poisoning. So-called priority foundation violations are those that indirectly contribute to illness or food poisoning. And the least serious are what they call core violations. They don't significantly contribute to foodborne illness or food poisoning. Think dirty floors or a dirty dumpster out back. And again, this is just all really confusing, so I totally understand if you haven't followed this. We will have a link to these ratings in the show notes for you, but to me it raises another question, especially because this is confusing. Should we consider, like some cities do, public letter grades on the door for establishments, as opposed to burying this in the corner of like a pretty buried away government website? Cities like LA and New York use letter grades, as well as more than 60 other governments, including the state of South Carolina. There are critics of this, usually from the hospitality industry, who say that it's just a snapshot in time. But others point out it encourages good behavior because the grade is public. Sven, maybe it's because I've watched way too many episodes of shows involving Gordon Ramsay, and I'm pretty particular, but I think this might be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in favor of anything that raises transparency around that issue. Restaurant sanitation is important. I mean, I'm thinking about the old Comos. I hate to kind of drag them through the mud again, but they had
under new ownership. Just we'll put
they're
that out
totally
there.
under new ownership. Not yet open, but they're making a lot of progress. They got a new facade on the building actually right now, but they had some frankly disgusting health code violations that shut them down for a period of time. And frankly, the first time I read about them, I think online somewhere, I stopped going there because I was just grossed out. I'm like, no, gross. Like just fundamental stuff that you wonder how they overlooked. I also point out that I grew up out in Ann Arbor, and I'm old enough to remember my parents used to get the Ann Arbor News, which back in the day was an afternoon newspaper. That people forget, but that used to be a thing. There were morning papers, there were afternoon papers.
Much like we're an afternoon podcast.
Yes. They used to print the health department restaurant inspections in the paper so you could read up on who's, running afoul of sanitation laws.
Well, even if they don't make these door grades that are as easily visible seen when you go and visit the restaurant, these descriptions are frankly confusing. I mean, you're going to have a priority violation and then a priority foundation violation and then like a core. What that? That means nothing to normal people. They should completely rename these.
Yeah, letter grade's a good idea. Jer, what's this? You cheating on us, man? I heard you were on another podcast last night. What gives?
Guilty as charged. I was on another podcast, recorded an episode of IT in the D, talking tech and Detroit and podcasting and all those things. You can find that over at itinthed.com. I was joined by our friend Nuri Gojai, Bob and Dave from Podcast Detroit. They're kind of the flagship of the Podcast Detroit network. So it was fun to hang out with those guys on a Monday night.
I feel like a neglected spouse here, man. With that, I'm Sven Gustafson. Thanks so much for listening.
And I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Super tasty. That sounds creepy. I'm not going to include that. I'm going to edit that out.
Super tasty. I think that's one to stick on the end.